Hey, good evening. It's Woodman here. The idea that everything we see is made up of atoms vibrating at certain frequencies and that solidity is an illusion comes from our understanding of atomic and molecular physics. Here's a kind of simplified explanation about it. Let's talk about atomic structure and vibrations. Atoms and molecules are the basic building blocks of matter, right? Atoms are the basic building blocks consisting of a nucleus made of protons and neutrons surrounded by electrons. The more you bond atoms together, the more that they then form molecules, which are combinations of different atoms bonded together. So now you have these subatomic particles as well. And the components of the atoms that they referred to previously, the protons, the neutrons, the electrons, are held together by fundamental forces. These particles are not static. They exhibit motion and they vibrate due to thermal energy, right? Because energy is everything, right? This is what we've heard many times. There's actual science to back this up. What about vibrations in quantum mechanics? Well, at a microscopic level, the positions and motions of particles are described by quantum mechanics. Electrons in atoms occupy specific energy levels and can be described by wave functions, which dictate the probabilities of finding an electron at a particular location around the nucleus, right? That's why when you look at quantum physics, rather than having this diagram of these things going around a circle, you actually have more like a cloud because these things move around so fast, it almost seems like a cloud after a while, seeing them moving so lightning fast. So, what about electromagnetic forces? Well, electromagnetic forces between atoms and molecules, the like say you touch an object, the electrons in the atoms of your fingers repel the electrons in the atoms of the object because like charges repel. This electromagnetic repulsion creates a sensation of solidity. In other words, everything around you looks solid, but it's not. And when things collide together, the repulsion creates this feeling like what you're touching is solid. Think about the nucleus itself. It's almost the overall size of the atom, and the electrons are spread out in a cloud around the nucleus, right? That's what quantum physics tells us. So, despite this, the forces between atoms in a material, like metal or piece of wood, create a very rigid structure. That rigid structure again creates the illusion of solidity. So when we look at matter as how we perceive it, on a macroscopic scale, these atomic interactions create a continuous and solid looking appearance. Our senses and the scale at which we interact with objects don't allow us to perceive the empty space within and between atoms. Once again, that's what makes things look solid. Things are going on, but we can't really perceive it at this level of, these subatomic particles whirling around and whizzing around. All we see is something that looks and appears to be solid, but it's the repulsion that doesn't allow us to invade that space of that object. So the molecules are in constant motion. There's thermal energy being emitted. This is vibrating around equilibrium positions. The higher the temperature, the more vigorous the vibrations. So in other words, when you start to heat things up, things start to break down after a while, right? So when you think of molecular vibrations, you think of molecules that are vibrating in specific modes, whether it be stretching or bending or so forth. And so each has characteristic frequencies. These vibrations can interact with electromagnetic radiation, such as infrared light is an example, which is how we can study molecular structures using spectroscopy. What about quantum energy levels? Well, the energy levels associated with these vibrations are quantized, which means they can only take on very specific values. When atoms or molecules absorb or emit energy, they do so in very discrete amounts, which we call quanta. And this corresponds to the different vibrational frequencies. So this is why we're always told that everything in the universe is vibrating. You may not think it's vibrating, it doesn't look like it's vibrating, but everything is vibrating. And so this kind of what contributes to the illusion of solidity. So on a macroscopic perception level, the collective interactions of trillions of atoms and the electromagnetic forces between them create structures that seem solid and continuous. If you fall on the floor, you're not going to phase through the floor, right? You're not going to be able to get past those atoms that are on the floor. So it's going to be very real and very solid to you, and it's going to hurt. On a microscopic level, these structures are mostly empty space, and the particles are in constant motion, governed by the principles of quantum mechanics. They're moving super fast that we can't perceive, and so this is why there's an illusion of solidity. This experience is the result of electromagnetic forces at play and our limited ability to perceive the atomic scale structure. So, in essence, what we see every day in our world around us is objects that appear to be solid, but they're actually made up of atoms that are mostly empty space, and they're vibrating at a certain frequency, and they're held together by electromagnetic forces. This creates the illusion of something being solid that we can't penetrate. Targeted treatment of cancer with radio frequency electromagnetic fields and amplitude modulated at certain tumor specific frequencies, when you think about this concept, you can throw these radio frequency electromagnetic fields at cancers in the body, and you can actually disrupt those cells without disrupting the normal cells that our body needs. So, in particular, I read an article which talked about this treatment. It's from a Chinese journal of cancer, and it talks about using these radio frequency electromagnetic fields through the mouth. Like you have like a tube, and it goes through the mouth into the body. And the treatment uses frequencies that are specifically tuned to the type of tumor in the patient. Because again, since everything is technically vibrating, even if we don't see it vibrating, if we can find out a particular frequency, we can disrupt the cells that are trying to grow. In other words, tumor-specific frequencies can stop new cells from growing. So if you identify these frequencies based on the cancer type that is involved with these patients, if you find the right frequency for a very specific type of cancer, it can interfere with cancer cell growth. It can then change gene activity, and it can disrupt the process of cell division, right? Isn't that what mitosis is about? Further studies are ongoing to understand exactly how these frequencies work at a physical level. This includes figuring out why cancer cells respond to the correct frequencies for the specific type, but not to other random frequencies or frequencies meant for different types of tumors. In other words, using using a frequency for maybe a tumor from breast cancer isn't going to work on a tumor from colon cancer, potentially speaking, right? So when you use these specific radio frequency I know I totally botched that. Using these radio frequency electromagnetic fields in cancer treatment, the way it's described, I heard someone tell me, oh, well, you can just use it to obliterate cancer cells. You can just cancel them out. It doesn't really work that way. What it's really doing is it's disrupting new cell production. It doesn't obliterate the specific tumors you already have there. It's just stopping new cells from being created. So you want to do it at an amplitude modulated frequency, which is specific to that type of tumor, and the frequencies are determined on the cancer type diagnosed in the patient. So the point of this is you're inhibiting cancer cell growth. Again, you can't go after the existing cancer cells and disrupt them, but you can disrupt the new cancer cells that are trying to grow. And that's the point, right? Is the cancer keeps coming back, keeps growing, and then eventually it kills the person and they die. If you can stop the cell proliferation, you can stop the gene expression, and you can mess with the structure of the mitotic spindle, which is necessary for cell division, you then stop the new cancer cells from forming. Amazing, right? So the frequencies work on specific cancer cells that correspond to the diagnosed tumor type. And they don't have the effect on other types of tumors or random frequencies. And they also don't have the effect on normal healthy cells, because you want to leave those healthy cells alone. We need those in our body, right? So the summary of this approach is that we're not canceling out existing cancer cells in a way that we think of like when we do with noise cancellation, because frequency is noise cancellation. But what we're doing is, because you're interfering with the process of cancer cells being created and growing and spreading, you can then stop the patient from getting sicker, so that it doesn't further metastasize, and you can limit the cancer cell growth response. So think about it again. Radio frequency electromagnetic fields, or are known as RF EMF, can stop new cancer cells from growing due to their ability to interfere with cellular processes, which are critical for cancer cell survival and proliferation. Right? Earlier, I talked to you about how things that are solid are still vibrating at different frequencies. And so, if you can hit the right frequency, you can interfere with the process and more cancer cells won't grow. So, you're targeting this mitotic spindle, right? Which is essential for cell division and for new cells to be created. So, therefore, the formation and function of these new cells is disrupted successfully, and therefore they don't get to divide, they don't get to proliferate, and you're shutting it down almost. So this is like a gene expression modification. You're using the RF EMF to alter the expression of genes that are crucial for cancer cell growth and survival. That means that you can turn off those genes that are promoting cancer cell proliferation and turn on genes that will inhibit the growth or, in fact, even induce cell death, right? So what you've got to do is you've got to find the right frequency. That's going to require experimentation. Using that selective frequency sensitivity, you realize that cancer cells are vulnerable to certain frequencies that are going to interfere with that mitotic spindle. So therefore, because they don't affect normal cells or other tumor types in the same way, the treatment is targeted. It's not having unnecessary side effects. And so that's a good thing. You want to reduce those potential side effects. So these biophysical mechanisms that we're doing here, right? It's not a perfect science. It's still something that we're experimenting on. We're learning. Our scientists are out there. Our medical scientists are out there, and they're learning about this. This is something they're learning about every day. You're altering the biophysical environment in such a way that you're messing with cell membrane potentials, ion channel functions, intracellular signaling pathways, and all of these things are necessary for cell growth and survival. Obviously, in healthy cells, yes, you want that to happen. But in cancer cells, you don't want that to happen. And so, using the RF EMF exploits the unique properties of cancer cells and their specific vulnerabilities to certain frequencies, which thereby inhibits their growth and stops the proliferation while sparing your normal cells, the normal cells you need to function and survive every day, right? Because isn't that what we're worried about when we hit something with radiation? We're destroying cancer cells, but we also can destroy real normal cells at the same time. That's why you can't just do that. Like, you can't just keep bombarding and think that that's going to be great. It's not going to be great because you're hitting healthy as well as sick. So think about the unique cellular properties. Cancer cells have unique biological and physical properties, and there are variations in their cell membrane composition, their electrical properties, and their intracellular processes. These unique properties make them more susceptible to specific frequencies of electromagnetic fields. Like, you can imagine it. You got these little cancer cells running around, and then you hit the right frequency, and they're like, "Oh my god, this hurts!" Right? Because that is disrupting the normal processes that are necessary for them to keep splitting, right? Keep dividing, that mitosis. So you want to modulate to those certain frequencies that target those unique properties. These frequencies are determined based on a specific type of cancer, which means the researchers have to know, well, this frequency works on this type of cancer. This frequency works on this type of cancer. It's very specific. It's not going to be that you're going to hit a magic frequency and it works on all cancers at the same time. You have to find the frequency that works on that particular cancer. So the resonance is important here. Like a tuning fork resonates at a specific frequency, cancer cells might have structures or processes that resonate with certain electromagnetic frequencies. When the RF EMF is applied at these resonant frequencies, it can induce the effects that disrupt normal cancer cell function. This is what I've been saying over and over again, like a broken record, because I know it's a difficult concept to hear and listen to. I'm trying to break it down in layman's terms that can make it easier to digest. The bottom line is you want to stop the cell division, which is the mitosis. You want to stop gene expression, and you want to interfere with the signal transduction, right? Because the mitotic spindle disruption is where the electromagnetic fields are now stopping a structure necessary for cell division. Disrupting the structure will prevent the cancer cells from dividing, because dividing is how they grow. That's how you create the new cancer cells. Your gene expression modification also makes it so that now the genes that are necessary for cell growth and survival are potentially turned off. You're turning off these oncogenes, right, which are genes that promote cancer. And you're enabling tumor suppressor genes, right? You have certain genes that work antithetical to these tumors. And so if you can stop the new ones from forming, and you can use these anti-tumor genes that are basically working against it, then you're shutting the whole process down. You're bringing everything to a screeching halt. So doing this doesn't affect healthy tissues, because the healthy tissues are not affected by those frequencies. And so that's much better than chemotherapy and any other type of therapy, which could affect both healthy as well as damaged cells, right? So scientists are still continuing to study how these frequencies interact with cancer cells at a molecular and biophysical level. Understanding the precise mechanisms will help refine the treatment and improve its efficacy with time. It's like a trial and error thing. Like, we don't just magically know, oh my God, that's the right frequency, that's the right whatever. We have to find out about that by using experimentation. The better we get at it, the more that we know, the more knowledge we develop, the more that we can do that RF EM modulation at the right frequencies that hit the sweet spot. This targeting is going to disrupt critical cellular processes, hindering cancer cell growth and the proliferation of new cancer cells while sparing the normal cells. I know that's a lot, and you got this little diagram here, well, that tries to explain it. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope you continue to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you continue to enjoy the content on this channel. I appreciate your support. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.